You're listening to the micro version of the Savage Lovecast at savage.love.
If you're stuck in a relationship quandary, or if you're looking for sexual harmony, well, there's nothing you can't ask on the Savage Lovecast.
Big news to start the show this week. I finally saw Challengers, the new Zendaya film about three tennis pros, and it was okay. I mean, your ability to enjoy the film really does, to a great extent, rely on you knowing something, anything at all, about how scoring works in tennis. And I don't know anything at all about the very confusing scoring system in tennis. So during the big match that the entire film is built around, this big match, this grudge match with the power to save a marriage, I had no idea who was up or down or winning or losing or who needed to score the next. I don't even know what you call it. Run, basket, touchdown, goal. I know how scoring works in the four bigs, baseball, basketball, football, soccer, but tennis? All I know about tennis is nice thighs. Anyway, the movie, as you must know by now, is about a love triangle between three hot people, or a love hexagon between six nice thighs. And besides thinking, what is the score? I kind of need to know the score right now. And they're showing me the score in this box on the screen and assuming I know what it means, but it might as well be in hieroglyphics. Besides thinking all of that over and over again, the only other thing I could think while I watched this movie was, why do straight people have to make it so weird? These three nice straight kids and their six nice thighs could have had a nice normal poly triad with a little MM action now and then, a little makeout sesh now and then between the boys to turn the girl on. But no, we couldn't have that. Couldn't have a nice normal throuple. We had to have a deeply conflicted, fucked up love triangle with rivalries and infidelities and tennis scores. Monogamous people love to say how exhausting polyamorous relationships sound. Too much processing, too much scheduling, too much emotional labor, so much work. What Challengers gives us, what Challengers gave us in place of the threesome we were promised in the trailer that doesn't actually happen in the film, is a portrait of a monogamous relationship that requires way more emotional labor and processing than any throuple ever did. I was so emotionally spent after seeing Challengers that I had to relax after the movie by starting a fight on group text with my husband and both of our boyfriends and 3 or 4 of our special guest stars. Anyway, there was no threesome in Challengers. Have I mentioned repeatedly for weeks now that there is no threesome in Challengers? So that wasn't a surprise. I was not surprised by that. But the brief scene featuring CBT, that did take me by surprise. I'm probably not going to see Challengers again. Well, not until someone can explain to me how tennis scoring works. But I am going to watch the GIF of Josh O'Connor slapping Mike Faist's hard dick again and again and again for the rest of my life. All right, before we start the show, something serious. 2 sitting U.S. senators, Tim Scott and Marco Rubio, both invertebrates hoping to be chosen as Trump's VP, went on TV over the last week and refused to say whether they would accept the results of the 2024 presidential election if Trump doesn't win. And another sitting U.S. Senator, J.D. Vance, went on TV this weekend and endorsed the policies of the Hungarian authoritarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban, who is a fascist who has destroyed the independent media, attacked academic freedom, torn up the Hungarian constitution, and backed Putin in his war on Ukraine. You know, if you're an American of a certain age, you remember when Republican politicians argued over and over again, repeatedly, forever, in every presidential election, that America was the greatest country in the history of the world, and any suggestion that we might be able to learn something from another country, any suggestion that there was any room for improvement here in the best of all possible republics, and that some other country might have figured something out that we hadn't figured out for ourselves yet, was cast as unpatriotic, nearly treasonous. And today, the entire dog-shooting GOP isn't just lined up behind a man who insists the country has gone to hell, but today's Republicans, The same Republicans in some cases who'd always insisted there was nothing we could learn from European countries when it came to healthcare or mass transit or social housing or paid family leave or free college education. Those same Republicans suddenly think we can learn a thing or two from this Viktor Orban of Hungary when it comes to destroying the free press, ending judicial independence, and rolling back academic freedom. I know, it's a sex show. I'm trying to stick to dildos, doing the best I can to stick to dildos. I gave you a CBT reference a minute ago. That was me. But what the GOP is promising to do, what they're telling us, no dog whistles, all sirens, what the GOP is threatening to import to America from Europe, it's alarming. I'm alarmed. You should be alarmed too. You should also be registered to vote. All right, coming up today on the Lovecast, on the micro, tons of your Qs, lots of my As, and the first half of my conversation with stand-up comedian Rachel Feinstein. Her new special, Big Guy, drops this week on Netflix. The first half of my conversation with Rachel is on the micro. All of it is on the Magnum that you can subscribe to right now at savage.love. And you not only get the longer ad-free Savage Lovecast, you get, when you become a Magnum sub, so much more. All right, if you're already a Magnum sub, show starts now. If you are not yet one of my subs, you got to listen to a few ads first.
Hi, Dan. I'm a 30-year-old single lesbian living in a big city in the Midwest. I recently made friends with a married lesbian couple through mutual friends. We usually hang out in a group setting, and I don't know them super well, but recently I've gone to events with either of them alone too, so we're becoming closer. I find them both very attractive, and this attraction intensified the other night when the topic of group sex came up and one of them made it sound like they were open to the idea. I've never done anything like that before, but now I can't stop thinking about it. Is there a way I could gauge their interest in a threesome, generally, and with me, without coming across insanely presumptive, weird, and ruining the friendship? How do people navigate this in real life with people they know, rather than with strangers on an app? Feel free to tell me this is a horrible idea and I should just keep my fantasies to myself.
You are a lesbian. If you ever want to have a threesome, if you hope to ever have a three-way, this is how it's going to happen for you. There aren't grinders or sniffies full of lesbians looking for one-offs or thirds. Lesbians don't use dating apps, hookup apps, come fuck me apps the same way gay men do. So lesbian threesomes don't happen for lesbians the way gay threesomes happen for gay guys. You can't actually, according to most of my lesbian pals, set these things up with strangers. Lesbian threesomes happen through friend networks with exes. So, yeah, you should go ahead. You should hit on these women. And what are you really risking? You say you don't want to ruin the friendship. You've only just met them. You're barely friends. And all you would be telling them is that in addition to liking them as people and being attracted to them as persons, you're also attracted to them as objects. You're sexually attracted to them too. And if the answer is no, you just say, okay, sorry, that's going to make things a little awkward the next time we're all at a party together. And we can power through that awkwardness like the adults we are and salvage the friendship, the nascent friendship that was already growing. But this is just a case of somebody's got to hit on somebody first. No risk, no reward. Arguing against making this pass. You weren't alone with them when you had this conversation about group sex, it sounds like. You were at a party in a group, a large group of women. The topic of group sex came up. And you say one of them made it sound like they were open to the idea. Could have been one of them was putting it out there that they've always wanted to have a threesome, and this is something that these two women have discussed with each other, and they were just lobbing that into the room in the hopes that someone would bite, that someone would make the first move, and maybe they hoped that someone was you. Also possible that the subject of group sex came up, and one of them's open to the idea and the other isn't, and so it's never going to happen with or for them. Or the one who said that they might be open to the idea was just pretending to be a little bit more sexually adventurous and sex positive, perhaps, than these two women actually are, which sometimes queer people will do in a group where, S&M comes up or group sex or sex clubs, and even people who would never and have never will joke that they would or possibly could, or under the right circumstances. It's a way of them letting the people in the room who are confessing to having had group sex or crazy adventurous sex or BDSM sex or been to lab in Berlin. It's a way of the people who would never and could never telegraphing to those people who have and would again that they're not being judged, that the person who's saying this thing, who's pretending to be sluttier than they actually are, is with the sluts in spirit, but not in act. But you won't know what the case was with these women if you don't take the risk. You can't get what you want if you don't ask for it. And as a lesbian, you don't have the Grindr or Sniffies option. You are going to have to use your words. Every lesbian I know personally who's had a crazy group sex experience, who've had threesomes, it's been a friend, it's been an ex, it's been somebody they met through their social circles at a party, and it happened for them in that way. If you want it to happen for you, you're going to have to take the risk and say the thing and make the pass.
Hi, Dan, Nancy, and the tech-savvy at-risk youth, 27-year-old cis female, seeking advice about a recurring thought that I have to reach out to an old situationship, which I still have complex feelings about. We'd met online when I was 17 and playing around on dating apps. I was transparent about my age on those apps, and he was 24 at the time. We talked frequently and became very close, and started having sex when I was 18. And he had always gone back and forth between me being too young and what we were doing was wrong, and then convincing each other that it wasn't, and that we had loved each other. As an 18-year-old, I was hooked on the drama and deeply attached to him. We had on and off again contact. The sex was incredible. Sometimes when we'd both be in relationships, we'd still talk about our complex feelings to each other and encourage each other to stay with our current partners. But there was always this forbidden love scenario acting out. We went no contact, social media as well, when I was 21, after our conversation where I had told him I just couldn't keep having him in my life in this way, and that it felt unhealthy and like he was a villain in my life. We were inconsistently consistent in each other's lives for those 4 years, always with high intensity. When I turned 23, 2 years after no contact, I received a text from him trying to reconnect and ask how my life has been. I blocked his number and continued to move on with my life for fear of repeating the same. For years, I had come to the conclusion that I was groomed by him and that he was bad for various reasons, but really waiting until I was 18 to meet and have sex, expressing complicated feelings around my age, having me lie about my age to his friends when he wasn't hiding me from them, even when I was 20 years old, and that I was manipulated by the strength of my feelings. And sometimes I have a sliver of delusion where I feel like fate might be at play and that maybe one day we'd be together, which is something we had often talked about. At 27, I'm frustrated with myself for still having him occupy space in my head, despite years of no contact. And up until recently, I had just written him off as a groomer with bad intentions and that I was a victim. But I'd like to change this narrative, and reconnecting makes me feel like I can humanize him in some way and take away this power of any regressive romanticism by squashing the mystery of him. I wonder if reconnecting as a person who understands people's complex desires will allow me to do this, or if this is just a symptom of me being emotionally manipulated at a young age, telling me I have more healing to do. I don't want him in my life in a permanent way, but I just want to stop wondering. Hoping to receive your advice, or just tell me what I already know, that this is stupid and self-sabotaging.
I was fucking people in their 20s when I was 17 years old, when I was 16 years old. Some of these guys were good guys, and some of them were bad guys. And I, at 17, I couldn't tell the good guys apart very easily from the bad guys. The good guys, as I could later see, looking back, the good guys were guys who I kind of ran into. They were attracted to me. I was attracted to them, and they made an exception for me. The bad guys, an exception for me at that age. They wouldn't normally date somebody or fuck somebody as young as I was. The bad ones, the bad guys, had a pattern of seeking out and fucking inexperienced, easily manipulated 16, 17, 18-year-old boys. And a habit the bad ones, of convincing those 16, 17, 18-year-old boys that we were exceptional, that they were making an exception for us because we were so exceptional. My first serious boyfriend, when I was a teenager, there was a 10-year age gap, much bigger age gap than your age gap with your first serious boyfriend. He was a good guy who was good to me and helped me. My next serious boyfriend, when I was still a teenager, was a habitual user of teenage boys. And at the time, when I was a teenager still, I really couldn't tell them apart. But by my late 20s, I could tell them apart. I could see the distinction. I could see the difference. I could see patterns. The guy who, my first serious boyfriend when I was 17 years old, I was the only person that young that he ever dated. The next guy, I was one of a series. He was out there to collect us all. So you have slotted this relationship and this dude into a narrative where he was the villain and you were being groomed, and that may very well be true. There's one way you can find out for sure, I think, whether that's true. If he was a monstrous piece of shit who was seeking out young, inexperienced women because it was easy to manipulate those girls, well, then there would be a pattern there. All of his subsequent girlfriends, his relationships would be teenagers, other girls like you that he would have sought out. But if he wasn't that guy, if he wasn't that villain, it's possible you were an exception. And maybe meeting up with him would help you let go of this narrative, which doesn't sound like it's necessarily helping you to cling to. This narrative where you were victimized. And maybe it's true. Maybe you were victimized, but maybe if you meet up with him, you will discover that A, he's not somebody you want to be with anymore. And this hold that he has over you because you're carrying around in your head who he was and what he meant to you when you were 17, 18 years old, 19 years old, 20 years old. Maybe that will evaporate. I had such a crush. Still, I carried a torch for my first serious college boyfriend. I was a little older. I was 20. Carried a torch for him for years, pined after him, met up with him, thinking maybe we're going to get back together. And in that one lunch, I was like, yep, no interest. It was all not a desire to be with him again, but nostalgia for what it felt like to be with him then. A desire to return to the intensity of those feelings, but I didn't have the same intensity of feeling for him. And maybe by getting together with this guy, you will glean from the interaction, from the conversation you might have with him, that there was no pattern here, that he wasn't the kind of person who was seeking out teenage girls because they were easily manipulated, and that your feelings for him have passed. And what you have are memories of this intensity, this time that you were with this guy. And by the time you actually met or started having sex, you were an adult. He was an adult. There was a significant age gap, but you were both adults. And maybe he was manipulating you and abusing you, and meeting up with him again will confirm that. And the narrative that you've constructed is actually the narrative, the correct narrative. Or maybe you'll be able to let this go and you'll feel a little bit less like a victim, or feel less like you have to act out victimhood, because it is how we're supposed to regard and understand these sorts of relationships with potentially problematic power imbalances now. Yeah. The guy I dated after my first serious boyfriend, he used me. I was victimized in that relationship. The guy who dated me before him, my first serious boyfriend, I was a teenager. He was 28 years old. He didn't victimize me. He was good to me. He helped me. He saved me. And it was only later that I could see that. When I was in my late 20s, as you are now. So even if you don't meet up with this guy, even if you feel like that's dangerous, I think maybe some reassessment of what this relationship was, what it meant to you, who you were, who he was, and maybe seeing it from a different angle, reframing it, might help you let go and move on from it.
The Savage Lovecast is sponsored by Squarespace. Squarespace is the all-in-one website platform for creators and business owners to stand out and succeed online. Whether you're just starting out or managing a growing brand, Squarespace makes it easy to create a beautiful website, engage with your audience, and sell anything from products to content to time, all in one place, all on your terms. You don't need to hire a web designer to make your website look fancy and interesting. With the new Squarespace Blueprint, you can choose from professionally curated layout and styling options to build a unique online presence from the ground up, tailored to your groovy style, and it'll work on every device. Easily launch your website and get discovered fast with integrated, optimized SEO tools so you show up more often to more people and grow the way you want. Use their amazing visual design effects built in and ready to go on any Squarespace website. Create your online aesthetic with dozens of modern and intuitive options. Then connect social and multimedia accounts in a few clicks to speed your message and look cool doing it. There are so many features available to you. Squarespace is like your savvy business partner who can take you to the next level. Head on over to squarespace.com for a free trial. And when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/savage and use the offer code SAVAGE to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. That's squarespace.com/savage and use the offer code SAVAGE.
Hello, Dan and company. My boyfriend and I are having a disagreement about the semantics of teabagging. I always thought that if I was putting balls in my mouth, that I was like teabagging that person. Well, I found out that he thinks if he puts his balls in someone's mouth, that he's teabagging someone. So who is the actual teabagger? The one with the balls or the one with the mouth?
Joining me to help answer this question, because why not, comedian Rachel Feinstein. You've seen her on Inside Amy Schumer, HBO's Last Week Tonight, CBS's The Late Late Show with James Corden, and NBC's The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon. She has a new stand-up special, Big Guy, premiering on Netflix May 21st. Hey, Rachel, thank you so much for demeaning yourself by coming on my podcast.
Oh, thank you. I couldn't wait. Are you kidding? This is delightful.
You're hilarious. The new special, which I got to see in advance, is hilarious, but it may surprise people to know who the big guy referenced in the title is.
It is me. My husband's nickname for me. And he always acts like I'm like weirdly insecure about it. He's like, come on, you're fun. You big guy. He keeps repitching it to me. And like, this we call like a union trucker, but he loves it.
Listening to you to the special, there's so much about your family, about your marriage, about your husband. And I got to say, hearing you talk about your family and this extended family of firefighters that you're really also married to.
Yes.
Reminded me of my family. My dad's a cop. My brother's a cop. My uncle's a cop. My nephew's a cop. Chicago cops aren't New York City firefighters, but man, there are similarities.
Oh my God. It's like, yeah, it's the same deal all around. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if your family, if they're like emotional deserts, but the men in my family, yeah, I mean, I came from like therapists, but you know, like my husband doesn't like process things. No, I just know if there's like a dent in the microwave that he's angry about something he saw on the job.
Yeah, we're a bit more processy, I think, because
That's
my parents were 70s parents, 70s Catholics. They were running Marriage Encounter, but
Really?
Irish Catholic cop family. We talked about our feelings, but we shouted about them.
I was always kind of jealous of those shouting families because my family was all just sort of like simmering hostility, you know, just like this kind of just low glaring and like just years of built up caked resentment. So I feel like get it out. I'm just very collectively attracted to cops and firefighters. Yeah, it's just.
Yeah, you talk in the show about how you like those thick-necked men.
I do. It's what works for me. It does. Yeah. And that's our neighborhood too. It's all cops and firefighters. So there's a connection there. Yeah, for sure.
You feel comfortable and safe in that neighborhood?
Yes.
With the cops and the firefighters? Yeah, we always felt safe because being a Chicago cop, having a dad who was a Chicago cop was like having somebody who was the head of a gang as your dad. It did make us feel safe. There was one time when somebody threatened my mother, and then that person was disappeared for a week by my some friends of my dad's. You don't threaten a cop's wife in Chicago.
Nah, it's not a good look. That is not a good look. Did people at school know that your dad was a cop?
Yes, they did. And
Yeah.
I grew up Catholic in the 70s and I never got touched, and neither did my brothers. And we think it was related.
Sure. Yeah. People find out pretty quick. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
the schools out here, they all have names like School of Heroes, and it's kind of like a Mount Rushmore of like cops and firefighters outside. So people get it, that gets around. But that's pretty cool. I didn't know that about you.
You're Jewish and from, like, would you say a middle-class background, an upper middle-class background?
Yeah, like my dad he was like a lawyer for the Department of Justice. So he was a civil rights lawyer, but he was like a government lawyer. So we weren't, and my mom was a social worker. So they were like, like went to grad school, but we like still had a Datsun, like a used Datsun. Yeah.
One of the things that's fascinating to me about like social trends right now is that women are doing so well. More and more women are going to college. Women are out earning men in many fields. And so there are lots of women in the next 10, 20 years who are going to be facing this prospect of either basically kind of doing sort of what you do, and what drives a lot of your comedy is marrying across a kind of cultural and class divide.
Yes.
Like, you have a lot of your humor is these observations you make as an outsider to the kind of men that your husband knows who are like your husband and this community. And I'm just wondering if you have any advice for women in the future or now who are facing this choice of like a man who, because a lot of women have hangups about marrying men of lesser educational attainment or who earn less than they do. But women are going to have to like ovary up and marry some of these working class guys or not have guys at all. And I'm just curious, having married across this kind of cultural divide, if you have any advice for women.
Well, I think for me, I'm personally not that educated. So I never went to college, but people assume I did, maybe because I'm like sarcastic and Jewish, just like I somehow get away with people thinking that I'm educated. But I don't, even though my family, like, they went to grad school and stuff, there wasn't even a question that I was going to. So that's one thing that kind of like helps me relate. I think it's helpful to, and material wise, I know it is, to be with somebody that's different than you, that thinks differently. And I find that like more exciting. First of all, I'm teeming with ADD. So I need that like clash to like excite me. I'm mangled. That's a medical diagnosis, mangled with ADD. But yeah, I need that kind of, that difference. And I'm obviously attracted to those men. I talk about it in the special. Like my dad kind of like had a never ending sinus infection. So like, there was they didn't know how to like fix things and stuff. No. So I am attracted to that. And I think it's helpful to just grow up with somebody to be married to somebody that communicates and comes from a different background. That being said, it's also infuriating for me because like emotionally, he doesn't like, they talk about like purchases in his family. People discuss like, what you bought at Costco or what you're going to get at Costco. And like, that's it, like nothing else is on the table. But that immediacy of those needs, like my mom wants to talk about, just racial suffering in the world. And so it kind of brings me down to earth. And so I think if you're going to marry somebody like that, like the advantage of that is also if you have a kid, like if I want to talk about my kid, I like to talk to my mother-in-law because it's like, it's immediate. Like she's like, what did she eat? Did she sleep? Like people are thinking about what's happening right now. And, my mom doesn't want to discuss that. She'll listen to you with like a leg up if you talk about some sort of suffering or burden or trauma, but the basic stuff, I feel like it is nice to live with somebody that is right there with like all the immediate things. That being said, look, if I'm weeping, I'm not calling my husband, like he's not the person he doesn't know how to like soothe. No, but that makes for good material. Yeah.
Also good advice that you don't go to one person to have all of your needs met.
Yeah, I feel like it's good to delegate. And I feel like people that say that they don't and that their, husbands are there, I think they're liars. I don't believe them.
Rachel Feinstein, her new stand-up special, Big Guy, premieres on Netflix May 21st. Rachel, thank you so much for coming on the Savage Lovecast. It was really fun. I hope you come back.
Thank you so much. I had the best time. Bye.
That was just a taste of my interview with Rachel Feinstein. To hear her thoughts on the semantics of teabagging, you'll have to subscribe to the Savage Lovecast. You'll have to become a Magnum subscriber to hear the Magnum version of the show, which has the entire great, hilarious, funny interview with Rachel and no ads to distract you. Get a Magnum subscription for yourself or give one as a gift right now at savage.love. I've been traveling a bit lately, but no matter where I land, whether it's at my boyfriend's place or at home with my husband, I am so happy to crash on a Helix Sleep mattress. The Helix lineup offers 20 unique mattresses, including the award-winning Luxe Collection, that's ours, the newly released Helix Elite Collection, a mattress designed for big and tall sleepers, and even a mattress made just for kids. To figure out which mattress is right for you, take the Helix Sleep Quiz like we did to find your perfect mattress in under 2 minutes, and your personalized mattress, your perfect mattress, will be shipped straight to your door, free of charge. And with Helix's 100-night sleep trial, you can try out your new mattress, see how your body adjusts, and if you decide it's not the best fit for you, you're welcome to return it for a full refund. Helix offers models with memory foam layers to provide optimal pressure relief if you sleep on your side, or models with a more responsive foam to cradle your body for essential support in stomach and back sleeping positions. Plus, enhanced cooling features to keep you from overheating at night, which is important for me because both of my guys are furnaces. Helix mattresses all come with a 10 or 15-year warranty, depending on the model. Other mattress companies use fiberglass as a flame retardant in their products, but Helix mattresses are free of harmful fiberglass materials. In fact, Helix owns its own manufacturing facility, which is entirely free of products containing fiberglass. And again, Helix offers a 100-night trial to try out your new Helix mattress and a 10 to 15-year warranty. For the month of May, Helix is offering 30% off Elite and Luxe models and 25% off Core models. And they all come with 2 free pillows. Let them know the Lovecast sent you by going to helixsleep.com/savage. With Helix, better sleep starts now.
Hi, Dan. I've been married for over 15 years in a monogamous relationship. I'm trying to spice things up. I have a healthy rape fantasy. It's really about wanting to be so desirable to my husband that he can't control himself and he just has to ravish me by force. It's also about me just loving getting fucked by my husband. We have a safe word, which I probably will never use. We've talked about our fantasy. We tried the rape fantasy 3 times. The best out of the 3 went like this. He woke me up on the weekend. Neither one of us had to work. He said, "Go get your ass ready. I'm going to fuck your brains out." I showered. I was trembling with excitement. I go back into the bedroom. He told me to get on my back. He lubed my asshole, but he didn't finger me. He lubed his dick and slid his dick into me balls deep in the first thrust. This was bareback, by the way. He really owned my hole. He fucked my brains out. He told me my hole was tight, that he owned my hole. I protested and said, "You can't just fuck me whenever you want." He said, "I'll fuck your ass whenever I want." He flipped me over and fucked me doggy style then. And then he came in my ass and slapped my ass. And then he said, "You're welcome." And then he left the room. I fucking loved every second of it. I want him to fuck me like this all the time, but he doesn't, and I don't know how more explicit I can be. Once a week or once a month, I think, is a reasonable request. I could leave a tie on the door or walk around in my fuck me tight gym shorts. You know, I want to be surprised. He's worried about an accident happening, but I'm not worried because I eat healthy and I take fiber supplements. I'm always ready. He said that he's worried that I might not be in the mood, but clearly that's not the case. But that's why we have a safe word anyway. So I would just really love to come home from work one day and have him bend me over the kitchen table, pull down my pants, and then fuck me hard, raw dog. So please advise and help this hungry hole starving for his husband's cock. I just want to be my husband's cum dumpster. I know, poor guy. Don't you feel so bad for him?
The tie on the door, hanging that tie on the door to send the signal to your husband that now would be a good time, or now is a moment when, if he's feeling it too, and he may not be feeling it, he could ravish you. That's not a bad idea, so long as when you do hang that tie on the door, when you send up that flare, when you put that bat signal into the sky, you understand that he's only going to come through with the ravishment if he's feeling it too. You're letting him know that you're feeling it, that now would be a good time if he's feeling it. But then you can't be resentful if, coincidentally, he's not feeling it at that time. And he might not be. You know, if your husband is being straight with you, if he's telling you the truth, that his concern is you may not be ready and he's worried about an accident. And some guys are more squeamish and concerned about that than other guys. And it's a sign that that may be true, that the one time or the best time that he came through with this fantasy scenario for you, he sent you to the bathroom to clean up and get ready and prep first, right? So it may be true that he's concerned about an accident or a mess. You hanging that tie on the door is your way of telling him that he need not be concerned about that accident or that mess because you're douched or ready to go. Maybe you're not one of those guys who needs to douche all the time because you know when you're good to go because you're taking those fiber supplements. And the tie on the door will mean then, if you discuss this with your husband, two things. You're in the mood for ravishment and to be dominated, and there's no risk of a mess or an accident, so he doesn't need to be concerned about that. Now, some people who have these kinds of submissive DS fantasies, and there's a lot of fantasies that fall under that header, feel like it kind of ruins it for them if they have to ask for it. It's not really dominance if they have to ask for it. Well, you've been with your husband for 15 years. You guys know each other well. You love each other. This is role play. This is cops and robbers for grown-ups with your pants off, and you need to be able to compartmentalize the asking for it from the doing of it, the going through with it. Because obviously your husband isn't this monster who doesn't care about you, your comfort, your safety, or your consent. He does. He cares about all those things. And that one time he was able to really come through with the fantasy scenario that you had laid out for him, that you would really enjoy with your consent. And so don't understand having to ask for it, having to put that tie on the doorknob or whatever, wear a certain colored t-shirt, wear a certain t-shirt, whatever it might be that you guys decide is the bat signal for ravish me if you're feeling it. Don't let that ruin it for you. Don't let that tell you that it's not what you wanted it to be because you had to ask for it. You always have to ask for it, even from your husband of 15 years. Now, let me do the marriage of true minds, not admit impediments. I don't want to pour poison in your ear. But it's also possible that this erotic script that works for you doesn't work as well for your husband. And it's not going to be a once a week or a once a month thing. It's going to be a biannual thing or a quarterly thing. That this is something that you might want a lot more or a lot more often than he does. And, you know, if he's only come through with this kind of sex for you 3 times in 15 years, going to quarterly, once every 3 months is going to be a huge step up. And that may be his limit. That may be as often as he's interested in this, in the way that he was interested in it or able to do it that one time when it was so great. And wouldn't you rather have a great ravishment scene with your husband every 3 months than a half-assed, out of obligation, him going through the motions, ravishing you the way you want to be ravished once a week or once a month, not because he's feeling it in that moment, but because he knows you're missing it. And what you want in a moment where you're being dominated by somebody, for it to be really sexy, is for it to be working for them as much as as intensely as it's working for you. So better those lightning in a bottle moments once every 3 months or once every 6 months than half-assed going through the motions, getting it over with, shit from your husband once a week. Have that conversation about the tie on the doorknob or the special t-shirt, the bat signal. Determine what the bat signal is going to be. And again, I feel like I need to emphasize this. You can put up the bat signal and Batman might not come in your hole after raw dogging you bent over the kitchen table because even though you were feeling it, he wasn't feeling it at that moment. And rather than stewing in resentment, just send the bat signal up next time when you're feeling it again. And if he's feeling it, Yahtzee, go for it. Enjoy it. Here at Savage Lovecast Industries, we are all about spicing up your sex life for the sake of having a better sex life, which is by itself a worthwhile goal, but also because spicing up your sex life can strengthen your relationships. And Liberator, with their sex furniture and pillows and wedges, can get you there. Liberator has all sorts of great and very sexy products but it's their pillows, their wedges, their ramps, their wedge ramp combos made Liberator famous and for many people indispensable. They get you these ramps, these wedges into comfortable positions, and if you go with their bondage options, they will keep you in those comfortable positions. Add a sex toy mount, and yeah, Liberator products blow your mind without blowing out your back. I've recommended slings on the show a lot of times, but slings, especially the hardware you need to hang them, they're a lot. You can't leave them out when company comes, but Liberators, bolsters, wedges, ramps, pillows, more easily stored away and less need to store them away. Made right here in the US from top-notch materials like furniture-grade foam, plush microfiber, and premium leather, Liberator products are built to last because you should invest in your pleasure. Liberator makes 2 bondage collections, the Edgy Black Label and their brand new Valkyrie edition with removable Velcro cuff fasteners. Whether you're a seasoned pro or you're just dipping your toes into the world of bondage and BDSM, Liberator has you tied and tethered and comfortable. And now, for our listeners, Liberator is offering 40% off their best-selling wedge ramp combo. Just use promo code SAVAGE at checkout. With Liberator, you can transform your sex life into a thrilling adventure. Head over to Liberator.com right now. Use the promo code SAVAGE to let them know the Lovecast sent you and to ignite your passion and make your wildest fantasies a reality. Have a spring fling with Liberator.
Hey, Dan. I just had a question. I recently had a loss in the family. A good friend of mine passed away about a month ago. And we're dealing with that, and we're going through it. But I found that on my end, I've just been, kind of masturbating a lot lately. And I really think it's kind of just to numb the pain, just to kind of get a nice dopamine hit. But definitely like 3 times a day on average, and it's kind of getting in the way of my sex life and kind of getting in the way of work. And it's really just how I've been medicating. I kind of stopped drinking a couple of years ago. And so I just want to know if you think that's an okay way to kind of just medicate for a couple months and not really worry about it, because I just, it's a lot right now.
I'm so sorry for your loss. I'm so sorry about the death of your friend. As coping mechanisms go, having a wank, better than having a drink, better than smoking meth, so I will allow it. Right now you are in the full grip of grief. Grief, in my experience, first it's a room you can't escape from, then it's a room you find yourself in, and finally it's a room you occasionally choose to visit to remember the person that you miss. What you do when you're trapped in that room to cope with how inescapable your grief is. Sometimes you need a distraction, and if your dick is a distraction for you right now while you are trapped in your grief, again, there are worse distractions. There are worse coping mechanisms. You say that it's interfering with your sex life. Okay, well then keep an eye on it. If it's interfering with your sex life, masturbating as much as you're masturbating for that oxytocin burst that you need to get through the day, you can make a conscious choice to dial it back. But at this moment, in the freshness of your grief, do whatever it is that you need to do. I mean, I hope you're not masturbating on the bus or the subway, but do whatever you need to do privately to get through the day. And what you're doing, it isn't self-destructive. You aren't hurting anyone. And if you have a regular sex partner, if you have a spouse, if you have a fuck buddy, I can't imagine if they are kind and decent and loving, they're expecting you to come through with the blowjobs or the cunnilingus or the 2-hour fuck sessions or whatever it is you usually do with your romantic partners or your sex partners. So yeah, maybe the masturbating right now is taking you out of the sex you might be having if you weren't in the grip of grief, but you probably wouldn't be having much sex anyway because of the grief. Me, when my mom died, I spent a lot of time in churches, not masturbating, just sitting, thinking, and it was weird. I felt weird about it. I did a This American Life piece, you can find it online, about how I processed my mother's grief, which was sitting in a pew, not sitting with my dick in my hands. It freaked out my husband. It really did. Freaked Terry out that I was suddenly spending so much time in Catholic churches again. But I got through it. And I haven't been in a church except to look at the art now for years. You'll get through. I'm sure you'll keep masturbating at a less aggressive clip, but you'll get through it. I'm grateful to the churches that had opened doors that I could visit and sit and think about my mother. You will be grateful for your dick. Your dick is there for you now when you need it. Enjoy it. What works, works, and what you're doing isn't going to do you any long-term harm. Again, really sorry for your loss. All right, time for a little listener feedback. First up, some of the comments left on last week's show in the very lively comment thread at savage.love. Says Shireen, regarding choking, Dan, I'm surprised you haven't put it together yet. You know how you always tie the financial crisis to the boom of the findom kink? Well, isn't it interesting how the choking kink took off after a global trauma of a pandemic, specifically a disease that makes it hard to breathe, and suddenly everyone everywhere thinks it's hot to have their air cut off. I think you're mixing up the timelines here. I am looking at a headline in The Guardian right now. The fatal, hateful rise of choking during sex, which was published in 2019. So I don't think it was the COVID pandemic that gave us the choking kink. The choking kink predates by many, many years. The choking kink taking off like it has predates COVID. Says Fluid Druid, saying a non-binary person is in an opposite-sex relationship, like you did at the top of the show last week, is a contradiction, Dan. Once you defy the rules of the gender binary, there is no opposite gender anymore. And of course, that's queer. I dare say it's more queer than all those straight-acting gay dudes out there that try to fit in with heteronormativity. All right, some of those straight-acting gay dudes aren't acting. For some guys, believe it or not, mask is their authentic gender presentation. And those dudes are just as entitled to identify as queer if they wish. Also, and maybe this makes me a bit of a dinosaur, but a non-binary person still has a sex. And ironically and paradoxically, they've created a new binary. You're either binary or non-binary, which is, of course, a brand new binary. But everybody has a sex. Usually it's one or the other, but of course there are some intersex folks out there. Finally, says Andrew, I have a lot of thoughts about last week's intro, mostly because I'm working on my dissertation, and I have a lot of queer theory on the brain. As I've researched the history of the use of the word queer, the archives show that the earliest uses of queer as a term for sexuality were among gay men using it for themselves as early as the 1910s. There's more to Andrew's comment, a lot more, all of it fascinating, but the comment in its entirety is too long to read here. Go read it for yourselves right now at savage.love and jump into the conversation about the show. All right, for more listener feedback, be sure to check out Struggle Session, where I respond to listener and reader comments. Goes up every Thursday, or most Thursdays, at savage.love. That is for Magnum subscribers only. If you want to read Struggle Session, you got to be a Magnum sub. And now, listener response calls.
Hi there. This is for the caller in the episode Wet and Messy who has to go back to work and her partner won't eat her pussy and she's thinking about leaving her job, potentially. I want you to think about the job market right now. I'm not sure what field you're in, if there's a lot of competition in your industry, but a lot of people have been laid off for months or over a year and can't get work. And I actually think you might have a harder time finding a job than getting this guy to eat your pussy. So I would leave him promptly, keep your job, do your career, and meet someone awesome in the city who will take your pleasure seriously. He sounds terrible.
Hey, Dan. I thought it was fascinating to have those two calls back to back, the one with the woman whose partner was an ass and wouldn't give him head, and then the trans guy who thinks that women aren't going to date him because he's trans. Like, it's ridiculous. Can I just let you know that both of them need to take responsibility and create the life they want. I was in a marriage that was not sexually satisfying. I left it. I went on the dating apps. I met a trans guy. He's the best lover. He's super attentive. So for the trans dude, please stop dating non-queer women. I identify as a femdite. This is the first time I've used a male pronoun about a lover this century. You guys have changed in the last 10 years. So when we went back on the dating apps, those of us who are femdites had to go looking for you because our AFAB butches had all transitioned, all right? So just be what the fuck you are and know that some of us find your body and your genitalia a feature and not a bug. So go look for us instead of the fucking straight girls. And to the bitch who's not getting her pussy licked, do not ever let a man enter your body until he fucking satisfies you. Ladies come first, period. If we all practice that, the world would change immediately.
Hey, Dan, I'm a 34-year-old trans guy from the Midwest calling to respond to the trans guy calling in about dating from the last episode. I just want to say I haven't had any issues dating. I'm not calling to like brag or anything. I just really hate the way that came across. Like women need to be like hyped up to date us. And I've never needed a woman to be hyped up to date me. I just live a normal life. I date women like anybody else would date women, except at a certain point, I disclose that I don't have a dick. Usually around the second or third date before anything physical happens. Most women don't care, and it's not a big deal.
And we're going to leave it there. We've got 3 great ways for you to get us your questions or comments for future shows. You can record your question or comment right now at savage.love/askdan, or you can make a voice memo on your phone and email your question or comment to q@savage.love, or you can call our landline and leave us a message at 206-302-2064. My Dirty Little Film Festival Hump is coming to Juneau, Alaska this weekend. Head over to humpfilmfest.com to get your tickets now. Nashville, Minneapolis, and Austin. Hump is coming to you next, and that will wrap up the spring tour of Hump 2024 Part 1. If you want to see Part 1 in a theater, you're going to need to get to Juneau this weekend, or Nashville, Minneapolis, or Austin next weekend. Hump 2024 Part 2 coming to theaters near you in the fall. And it's not too early to start making your masterpiece now for Hump 2025. Go to humpfilmfest.com/submit to learn all about the rules, our extra credit points, and the cash you'll earn if your film makes it into Hump 2025. Follow me on Instagram and Threads at Dan Savage. Follow me on Blue Sky at Dan Savage, and you can still find me on The Bad Place at Fake Dan Savage. Follow Rachel Feinstein on Instagram and Threads at Rachel Feinstein _. And be sure to watch her new stand-up special, Big Guy, on Netflix now. The Savage Lovecast is produced every week by Nancy Hartunian, and me and the tech-savvy at-risk youth and Nancy will all be back at you next week. Another installment of the Savage Lovecast. Thank you.